Hi, everyone. If you're watching on Facebook or you are joining our webinar, it's about to start in about 12 minutes. Our panelists will be jumping on here to discuss second chance employment in Oklahoma. And we're excited to share this information with you. It's for a while, just a few minutes, going to be me awkwardly sitting here by myself. So if you'd like to go grab a drink or a break real quick and then come back, we will be starting about at noon. Thanks. Hi, everyone. If you're joining on Facebook or on the webinar, it's about 10 minutes until we get started with our community conversations on second chance employment. Our panelists will be joining shortly, and I am just sitting here awkwardly making sure the webinar works. So this is not going to be the most exciting part of this hour, I promise you. Hi, Doug. I see that you've joined. I am trying to promote you to panelist. It might ask you to accept or something, so I'm gonna try to promote you to panelist, okay? Hi, Susan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So good to
Good,
see
good.
you.
You too. You too.
We have a few minutes here.
Okay.
Trying to get all of the panelists promoted. There's Doug. All right, it looks like it's gonna work, you guys.
Good.
This part of the webinar is always the most stressful part for me personally, trying to make sure it's all gonna work correctly. We'll get started in about 5 minutes. Thanks everybody for joining. Hi, Erin.
Hi. Thanks for doing the hard technology part so we don't have to.
You are welcome. I wish it was literally anyone but me, but it's me, so here we are. All right, here we go. People are jumping on. There's Laura. Hi, Laura.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Everybody want to try their audio real quick to make sure? I heard you, Erin. I heard you, Laura. I heard you, Susan. What about you, Doug?
Can you hear me?
Yes, it's working perfect. Great. We're gonna get started in about 3 or 4 minutes once everyone's here and ready to go. Thanks you guys for being here. Well, it is straight up noon o'clock on Tuesday, November 23rd. And it is time for our community conversations from Oklahomans for Criminal Justice Reform. So welcome everyone. If you're just joining us for the first time, typically what we do is we just have a bunch of really awesome panelists who are subject matter experts and have experience in the topic. And then also we have folks join us who have lived experience in the justice system to share their experiences. And this month's topic is on second chance employment and economic growth. So one of the things that we have been hearing from employers across the state is that there is a major labor shortage. They're having a hard time finding employees. We know this is happening across the country. And this is something that can easily be remedied by essentially reforming the way that we hire people and look at people with criminal backgrounds. There's a big movement for this, for reconsidering how we look at background checks and for how we move forward, knowing that there's this entire force of people ready to work and who are qualified and ready to move on with their lives, but they're kind of being blocked out of the traditional economy. So this is something that I really wanted to discuss with some people who work in this issue every day, who hire people with records, who know people with records, who are people with records, and who are working on this issue nationally as well to bring it to the forefront. So this is a really exciting time to be working in this space. There are so many people doing great work on this topic. And so I'm just really excited to be here and hear from you guys about your ideas and experiences for how we can get more people to work, more people to become economically mobile, upwardly mobile, and just have a better quality of life after they've left a period of incarceration. So thank you guys so much. I'm quickly going to introduce our panelists here, and then I'll let them tell a little bit about what they do. And then we have some questions for the panel. And if anyone wants to submit a question on the Q&A, you feel free to do that. And we will try to address it before we run out of time. We do have a lot of panelists today because this is such an exciting topic. So I would just ask everybody to be mindful of the time that they're speaking and make sure that we have enough time for it to hear from everybody. I will try to do the same. So I'm just going to introduce everybody in the order that I have them, but quickly I wanted to give you all some stats on this topic. So basically, about 700,000 men and women are released from jails and prisons every year back into American society. Approximately 70 million people have a criminal record, which equates to 1/3 of working age US adults. When released, they're expected to find work and support themselves and their families. Yet even prior to COVID-19, the unemployment rate for formerly incarcerated people was 27%. Instead of helping these people create stable lives, many employers screen their applicants for criminal history and disqualify people who are otherwise qualified for the job. We'll be talking about all these issues today and more. So I'm going to just introduce our amazing panel. First, I would like to just discuss my amazing friend, Susan Mason. She is from Washington. Her organization is called What's Next Washington. And she is a formerly incarcerated executive director of that organization. She's a local and national advocate and activist. And in Washington State, she sits on the Fair Chance Housing Coalition, the Voting Justice Coalition, and is an advisory board member at the Tom Below Institute for Design Thinking at Bellevue College. Susan is an incredible activist and working in this space to help people become more upwardly mobile in the economy after periods of incarceration. Next, we have Aaron Brewer, who is a fourth-generation Oklahoman who spent a decade doing nonprofit communications and fundraising before opening a restaurant and bowling lounge called Red Pin Bowling in Bricktown in Oklahoma City. with her husband. She was the general manager, and they became very intentional about becoming a second chance employer, and they employed about 10 to 20% of their staff who were transitioning out of the justice system at the time, coming into halfway houses. During that period, she really learned how difficult Oklahoma makes it for our citizens who are returning from periods of justice involvement. Thank you, Erin, for being here. We have Doug Schaefer, who is the director of Scissortail Waste Solutions. He has been a second chance employer for 7 years, and 25% of his workforce are justice involved, as well as providing internships for participants of the Center for Social Innovation. Doug's success follows 21 years in medium and maximum security prisons in Oklahoma, and he has experienced all the obstacles that ex-felons face, and now he helps others navigate those barriers. We have Laura Law, who is the executive vice president, of FiberPad Inc. in Tulsa, a plastics manufacturing company. FiberPad is committed to being a second chance employer that offers opportunity to marginalized workers. Laura has served as a mentor for incarcerated women as they prepare to reenter society and the workforce. Laura believes passionately in the dignity of work, the importance of access to opportunity, and the stability that a good job can bring to an individual, a family, and the community. Thank you so much, Laura, for being here. We have Sherry Bates, who I need to promote to our panelists. I'm so sorry, everybody. Sherry will be here just momentarily. Sherry is an HR generalist for Aon Inc. She started her journey in HR 7 years ago because she believes in supporting others as something she does innately. Sherry passionately believes that humans should be treated with patience and respect. She graduated from ORU with a communication degree and minor in humanities, and she has completed a leadership reputation academy through Schnocke Turnbow and Frank. And some of her favorite past activities include spending time with her beautiful daughters. Aon is a second chance employer, and they're notorious for their good practices here around the state. Who am I missing? We've got Rachel Wilson here. She is the founder of Me Network Inc., which advocates and supports all integrated employment programs for reentry and people who are disadvantaged. She is a community health worker who is also firm bridge in reentry and visually impaired and blind communities. So thank you so much for your work, Rachel, as well. Did I get to everybody? This is such an awesome panel. I'm so excited you guys are all here. What I'm gonna do basically is I have a couple of questions that have specific people that I'm gonna address them to. But if you feel like you have something to provide on that question, feel free to jump in. No problem. I will not berate you or anything on the webinar, maybe afterwards. Just kidding. So we've heard a little bit about who each of these amazing people are, but I want to hear, what is it like for someone with a criminal history to find employment? And I'm wanting to hear specifically from Susan and Doug, who have prior justice involvement, what it can feel like and what it can be like looking around for jobs.
Hi, everybody. Again, I am Sue Mason. I'm the formerly incarcerated executive director and co-founder of What's Next Washington. I was released from federal prison in 2003. I've been out almost 19 years, and I can tell you that I am still impacted by that conviction. There are multiple sectors that I would not be able to work in to this day that I couldn't even get an education in. Sectors like finance, healthcare, energy, logistics, and others. So for me, the impacts of having a conviction history were constant. I was locked out of the 4 economic pillars of our society: banking, housing, education, and employment for decades. And I think that what happens invariably is that we punish people without end dates, right? So like there's an expiration on the half and half in my fridge, but there's no expiration on my sentence, right? And so I think that we've gone way too far with the collateral consequences of having been convicted of a crime. We supposedly live in a system of law and justice that says if you commit this crime and you do this time or pay this debt in this way, that we're X'd out. But in this nation, that's not true. We impose collateral consequences And most of those collateral consequences are around employment. And so we are impacted by not being able to stabilize, stabilized, and really move on with our lives after incarceration.
Hi, I'm Doug Schaefer. Having served 21 years in prison for drugs, thefts, and second-degree murder, when I got out almost 11 years ago, at the age of 40, the only job I could get was a minimum wage handyman job because I didn't have to go through background checks or anything like that. I had a wife and a daughter, trying to support them on a minimum wage job. My first Christmas out, I was extremely desperate. And I faced that choice of going back to what I knew to provide for my family, or just try to keep on doing what I was doing, and getting told no every time you apply to a job. Eventually, somebody that was going to church with me actually got me my first real job. And from then on, it's always been somebody I knew, not what I knew or not who I applied to. And I've seen so many guys, I've got 5 of them that work for me. Every job they apply to, they get told no, because they got that felony in their background. And I think that a brief soapbox, but there's a ban the box movement around the country. Personally, I'm not in favor of ban the box, because I'd rather have them tell me no now. They go through 6 months of interviews, then run the background check and tell me no. And I've actually had that happen to me by the city of Oklahoma City. I think what we need to do is work more on the legislation that says you can't discriminate. There's several states out there that have fantastic second chance laws, and Oklahoma has nothing. So it's extremely difficult especially for a man, but a single mom. You want to take care of your family, and you can't do anything but work at Church's Fried Chicken if they'll hire you. So it could be extremely discouraging to most ex-felons.
Thank you guys for your vulnerability and sharing your experiences. I know it can be hard and re-traumatizing to share that, but at the same time, it's so important for other people who are struggling with this to hear that there is hope on the other side, and there are people that are successful. So I just really want to thank you for sharing that. Oklahoma is really entering kind of a renaissance of this issue right now. We have lived for the last 20-30 years under some very stringent collateral consequences. And I personally believe that that is what has driven our incarceration rate to be so high, is because, like you said, Doug, there's not really another choice in the current environment, unless you just happen to know somebody or you have a family member that owns a business or things like that. There's just not really a lot of choices. And so thank you for highlighting that. How can the Oklahoma economy benefit from hiring individuals with criminal history and spur economic growth? I'd like to hear from our employers on the panel for this one. We'll hear from Laura and Sherry on this.
Hi there, thank you. Anytime that people are working, that benefits that individual, benefits the family they come from, benefits the community and the economy as a whole. Right. I think everybody on this panel, everybody that's listening in, understands how payroll taxes improve the entire community, and of course provides financial stability for that individual. And oftentimes it can also help people sort of bootstrap themselves up a little bit, just having a reasonable access to opportunity. So many models also predict that unemployment decreases crime, or excuse me, unemployment increases crime. And employment post-incarceration is an excellent deterrent for recidivism.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Sherry.
Hi. Yes, I kind of echo what some of the comments that she made. And we also move employees from being able to be contributors to the economy and to society, as well as, they become taxpayers and they become more productive. So yes, I echo what you said.
Exactly. So I did some calculations not too long ago. The average wage in Oklahoma right now for one person is about $27,000 a year, which is very low. But even on that, you're still paying taxes. And when you consider that Oklahomans pay $20,000 per year per inmate incarcerated from our taxes, those are people that could be tax-paying citizens that are not able to pay into the system also. So we're not just paying the 20,000, we're also losing the amount that they're not paying in. So that's a loss that we don't really often calculate. Thank you guys for that. So why might organizations be reticent to become a second chance employer? I mean, this is sort of the elephant in the room, right? That we hear from so many people who apply for so many jobs that it's always no, no, no. But from the employer perspective, you know, we hear them saying, I have a right to know who I'm hiring, and I have a right to know about the risks that come with that person. What are some of the reasons why people are so hesitant to hire people with records? And then what would you say to those people to bring them along? I'm going to address this one to Aaron and Rachel. Is Rachel here? Rachel, are you there?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Rachel.
Hello, hello. I think more people are still stuck in the past. And so when people have felony backgrounds and an employer sees that box checked, it's more so as a liability. Like, what are we going to lose? They don't look at the gain. They're looking at what they have done in our system to receive this criminal background. And so I think a lot of employees would need to do their research and see the benefit of hiring an individual who has just re-entered back into the workforce. They get a tax break. And there are a lot of different other reasons, you know, support something that they may go through. Any time in your life, you can go through something that subjects you into having some type of trauma. Losing keys, have anxiety, panic attacks, all those things is a process. And that is the same way an individual needs to be treated that's coming out of prison or that's coming out of a rehab. There is a process that they have to take and steps that need to be made. And that employer could help with that person's process. And so there's just those two ins and outs that I see personally from employers.
In my experience, I'm not proud to say that we were hesitant at first before we began employing people who had justice involvement, but our initial worries were proven to be really silly. We were concerned that maybe our other employees might not be safe, or we were concerned that because someone might have had a record, maybe they would not be reliable or they wouldn't be honest. But the truth is that general population applicants bring you all the same potential risks because we're all human. So once we took the gamble of hiring someone from a local halfway house in our restaurant, we discovered an incredible workforce of people who were reliable and honest and hardworking, who wanted to build relationships, who wanted to learn new skills, who were proud to be at work and who took their jobs very seriously. And it was such a positive experience that then we began recruiting employees from halfway houses because we really enjoyed their participation on our team. We loved the perspective that they brought to us, and we were proud to work alongside of them, but also they proved to be excellent employees who stayed with us a long time. We were a restaurant. Restaurants have really high turnover. These were employees who wanted to stay on the job. And despite all the hurdles of they struggled to find housing once they were released from a halfway house, they struggled to get transportation. They overcame those things and worked really hard to be on our staff. And so we regretted that we ever had any doubt because what we found was when you compared the employees who had a justice involvement background and our employees who were just general population, the truth was they faced the same challenges in life, and they all got to make individual choices about how they were going to approach those things. So the truth is, our general population employees sometimes caused more trouble for us than others. And I will say, and we employed probably, I would say, a couple hundred justice involved folks in our years in the restaurant, and we only let 2 of those people go. That's an incredible statistic.
Susan, you wanted to jump in on that. I saw you get.
I do. So listen, so I hear this a lot, and I want to give you some data. So there's actually that 70 million numbers, that was as of 2015. So right now there are 77 million people in this nation with a conviction history, and 70 million have no further criminal legal system involvement. So that's 1 out of every 3. And by 2030, it'll be 100 million people. That will be 1 in 2 working age adults, right? Now, do we have this many criminals in our society compared to all these other countries? Or do we rely on overcriminalization and mass incarceration to solve all our problems, right? So if we take that, then maybe we're looking at this population wrong. And so one of the things that we encourage is that, the other thing I want to say too is that the odds of somebody applying right out of prison are very, very low. Mostly the people that are getting rejected for employment have already been out, have experience, have skills, have already been working, and they get rejected anyway. They can get rejected for decades, right? And so the idea is, like, if you're an employer and you are not accessing this talent, you're in trouble. You're in a lot of trouble, and you're going to be really in trouble by 2030. So if you don't have a strategy to recruit, hire, and retain people with conviction histories, including formerly incarcerated talent, you're not going to be able to meet your labor needs. And so our organization came up with the Partnering for an Inclusive Workforce project. It's a series of tools and roadmaps and strategies for employers to use to get over these fears. And I love that there are employers that can say out loud what our hypothesis is, that whether we succeed or fail, we do so for the same reasons and at the same rates as our peers. And when we fail on the job, we are, lack of maturity. Maybe it was transportation, maybe we got another job, but it's, maybe it is an unaddressed substance use disorder. None of that's criminal behavior. So we assert that we're not on your in your place of business criming it up. We're actually just facing, like you said, the same challenges as everybody else.
That's right, Susan. I knew that when Erin said that her free world workforce had the same struggles with, sometimes getting arrested, sometimes battling substance use, sometimes having violence in the home, the same types of things that people struggle with that have records. They're facing them at the same rate. It's just that you didn't have a red flag on their application when they applied to let you know that that was going to happen. So it's almost like, like you said, you're seeing people that don't have any convictions that struggle with the same exact issues, but you just weren't warned ahead of time that was going to happen. So let's talk to Laura and Sherry and Doug real quick about what are the policies that differentiate your organizations that allow you to make these hiring choices. What would you say are the predominantly big changes from your hiring practices that other organizations could learn from, or that they don't currently have in place? Because like Susan said, you're not going to be able to meet your labor needs if you don't make these changes. And so I think what part of our role here is today is to help any potential employers who want to move in this direction learn what they can do to move towards accessing this talent pool. So Laura, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of accessing this talent pool, there are a lot of ways to get there. I think Doug mentioned there's the movement to ban the box, and people fall on both sides of that issue, but just looking at what are your pre-screening qualifications, and are you immediately screening people out that have a criminal background, and absolutely do away with that, whether or not you have it on the box for prior conviction on the application or not. So removing that barrier is really important. Once you get to the interviewing and especially the hiring stage, I think it's absolutely critical that you're clear about expectations for performance with the candidate. And that depends often on how recent was their incarceration. So if it was years ago and they've really moved on, and that they're probably just like any other candidate that you're looking to hire, that might be one thing. But if somebody is recently released, you might consider they may have additional court dates coming up. So being proactive about expectations for attendance, will they need to be missing work for any of those court dates? Do they have reliable access to transportation every day? Do they have a reliable place to stay at night? So just making sure that the employer and the employee are both clear on what you're expecting from them. And if there are any barriers that prevent them from meeting performance, just communicate early and often, and especially checking in with the employee as they're being trained and just making sure they're acclimating to the environment well. And did you want to talk about what moved us into this direction also? I think so.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that too. I don't know if you want to save that for a later question or if you want to just go into it now.
I'll save it.
Okay. Sherry, do you, Aon, have any specific practices that you do to increase the likelihood that someone with a record would be getting to a yes instead of hearing a no?
Yes, I've been with Aon for 7 years, and since I've known Aon to be, we've always recruited and hired second chance team members. It's just been a part of who we are. We look at them as any other team member, as a contributor. If they are able to perform the job duties, we give them the expectations just like we would any other one that we're hiring. We take them through the same process. Of course, we have to look at some of them on a case-by-case basis. If they have any, severe violence, we seek legal counsel for things like that. But we look at them just like any other employer, and we treat them respectfully and honor and respect whatever they bring to the table as a skillful employer or employee.
Doug, you are actually someone who is a formerly incarcerated person who became an entrepreneur. So you have a unique experience that you can help your potential employees in maybe a way that's more personal for you than maybe other people. What have you built your hiring practices around, some of your personal experiences?
Yes, I have. Two of our primary targets, and I try to recruit heavily for this, are second chance people, justice involved, and single moms. We try to give both of them an opportunity to develop some roots in the community to where they can focus on the real important things, which is their family, their personal, mental, spiritual stability. They don't have to worry about their finances. When I first interview somebody, the first thing I do is bring them up on oscn.net, right there in the room with them. And I ask them if they have any background issues that they need to discuss. And I make sure that they understand it's not in any way an obstacle to their employment. I just need to know because there's certain things that we do going near schools, different things like that. Certain types of offenders we can't hire to do certain things. And without fail, every single one that has been honest with me has stayed with me. The ones that try to lie or minimize what they did or say, didn't have this or didn't have that. Maybe it was out of state, so I didn't have access to it. Every one of them that's ever lied about it, I've ended up having to let go for performance issues. But the ones that have stayed are some of the most committed and dependable employees that I've got. And they know that I've got a background, and I know they've got a background. So that eliminates all those excuses that they try to make for communications or barriers or getting up on time, lack of discipline. I've been there, and I don't accept it as an excuse. But we kind of develop an eye-to-eye understanding that we're gonna do this together, and I'm gonna give you every chance you need to succeed. But you have to want it. You have to want to succeed before you're going to succeed. And then I don't treat them any differently from anybody else. I don't need to bond. I don't need, I've seen some of these panels. I've heard them talk about pairing them up with a buddy to, kind of keep an eye. Who wants to work with somebody watching you every second? If I'm willing to hire them, I'm willing to treat them like any other employee. Once I hire them, that background is no longer a concern of mine. I give them the chance to just be a citizen, earn their wage, and earn their own respect.
It's a good perspective. So what would that kind of brings me to the next question, but what would be some of the other factors that you would look for somebody, and maybe this is specific to your business, so I don't know, but if you've what are the determining factors for success that you guys have seen? Someone that you know has a record, but then they come in and, like you've talked about, they've been so dependable, they've been so reliable, and they've been very loyal. What would you say are some common factors for success? That's going to go to Aaron and Susan, but then anyone else who wants to join in.
Susan, do you want to start? Do you want me to go first? I'll go. Okay, I'll go ahead. I think for us, it was really important that we made sure that the environment in our workplace was inclusive of everyone. So whatever background you came from, whatever your faith, ethnicity, all we cared about was that when you were at work, that you were doing your best job. That was all that mattered to us. And so we worked really hard to just treat everyone with equity and equality. And when you earned opportunity, we gave it to you. So, I mean, I had kitchen managers that had a background. I mean, we gave people opportunity to grow and expand with us when they earned that, regardless of justice or non-justice involvement. I had a personal open door policy. I had hours every week where I was in the office and anybody could come in, and it was a safe place. You could tell me anything that was difficult, an employee that was bothering you, whatever was hard in your personal life. Because the truth is, if you're struggling in your personal life, it's hard to be a good employee. It's hard to do your job well. And we chose to focus on our employees first. I know a lot of people say customers come first. And if your employees are struggling or unhappy or aren't working well together, the customers are never going to get the service that they really deserve. So we focused on our employees first. And I think just that environment of knowing that we would support each other, knowing that we were never going to talk about what your background might be, because when you're on the job, that did not matter. I think that made a really big difference. And I think it's part of why our turnover rate was really low.
I think that what I want to say is that we all exist on a spectrum, right? And so you're going to get people, and I want to separate the two groups. There's millions, tens of millions of us. We're just out here living our lives, right? And yes, there are people being recently released from jails and prisons who need support. And we need to make sure that we offer opportunity and pathways for them to stabilize and move into economic stability. But what we also need to address is that there's millions, tens of millions of us that are impacted and can be economically destabilized by just seeking employment, right? And have jobs rescinded over and over and over. So what we're really talking about are people. And do the people that are coming into my place of employment need support? Well, everybody does, right? So if you are, whether you're a tech company or you're a restaurant, you know which employees need support. We do this for executives, right? Like we provide coaching, we provide training, you go to conferences, you get all kinds of supports to level you up, right? And so the thing that we miss about people that are not in a middle management, upper management, or executive level is that everybody needs support from their employer to be the best employee that they can be, some more than others, right? And so I think if we stop looking at whether somebody has a conviction history and assess, what supports they need as an employee, I will also add a caveat that I think that in this society where our social safety net is so broken, and that there's really no access to support when things happen, that wraparound service providers are really useful for employers, and they should be third party, because I don't know of anybody that wants to go to their employer and tell them, their personal problems. However, as you said, the personal problems do impact performance, right? You've got your star performer and all of a sudden they're late to work all the time. Well, maybe they couldn't pay the daycare. or maybe the car broke down and it's $700 and they don't have $700, right? And so third-party wraparound services can help people, or maybe they got a ticket, they can't afford the ticket. So they are there to help stabilize employees, whether they're formerly incarcerated or not, to really, especially the first year of employment when somebody's been destabilized for a while, it's critical to make sure that people have the supports they need. So I'm happy to talk about that further. But I really think that Erin's 100% correct. It is the employer's responsibility to make sure that the employees are successful by providing the necessary supports, and it doesn't really have anything to do with conviction history unless you're on probation or parole, and you need to be an employer that understands the constraints of that, right? Like I tell employers all the time, if you've got somebody who's recently released on probation or parole, you cannot ask them to stay late. You cannot ask them to show up early. They have to report. They have to, their whereabouts have to be known at all times. And they could literally go back to prison or jail if they didn't know how to tell you, no, I can't stay late, because they had to be back at the halfway house at a certain time. So there's, under that set of circumstances, probation, parole, way different. For everybody else, no different.
Does anybody else want to jump in on that question about helping people be successful, or if there are clear markers that you notice about people when they're applying that tell you this person is going to be successful, anything like that that could help future employers that you want to jump in on?
Yes, I do.
Everybody you hire is a crapshoot. Sorry, everybody.
That's okay. I think any reentry employer should have a case manager on their team, because they're traumatized so much that when they come back into society, they are very, very stressed, just stressed and strained. Even if that employer knows they have a background, they walk on eggshells at all times. So if we can have, because I also have a background, and for me to have the experience that I received, it was just like no go. Where do you go if people say, yeah, I can hire you, I'll hire you. You go through that process and then they deny you. Or you go to get an apartment and they say, well, we allow people that have felony backgrounds to rent. And then they take your deposit and then that just goes away. All of that is just a setback. And so for a case manager to be on your team to actually help them with resume training, help them with social skills, help them with, how to dress, all of those things are vital to every person that is coming out of prison. They need that support. And so that'll help them establish a relationship to become a bridge between that person and their job. Because again, at the end of the day, all they want to do is not go back to jail.
That's a really good point, Rachel. And what I think I hear kind of emerging is sort of like two different, or maybe multiple different groups of folks that we're actually talking about. There are people who are in need of employment who are recently exiting, and they are still dealing with the mental health impacts and the life impact, rebuilding. They're in a period of rebuilding their life. They are significantly traumatized. And so if you, as an employer, I think are going to work with a group that is recently released or in a halfway house type of situation, it is strongly advised that you would have some more guardrails like case management, these kinds of things, and allowing for more I guess, liberal attendance policy for people who need to go to their appointments or who need to meet any of their restrictions, any of their probation restrictions. That is going to be a whole different set of policies, I think, for an employer than looking at this massive pool of talent that has a record, maybe a prior DUI arrest, but they're out and they've been, away from that conduct for several years, but they're still being economically limited by that record. And so I think that we're talking about two separate sets of policies that would need to be developed. There's the policy for folks who are recently getting out or still dealing with the impacts of their incarceration. And then there is the set of policies that really is about the screening and the limitations that people face of screening for those records. Does that sound like, am I kind of coming around? Okay, Susan's clapping. Yay, good. Okay, we're gonna move on to the next question, but that was really good, you guys. Did anybody else, sorry, did I cut you off, Laura? You were gonna jump in.
Yeah, just one quick note on what kind of factors are we looking for whenever we're deciding whether or not to hire somebody with a criminal background? Because we hire folks that are both recently released or people that were incarcerated even decades ago. And usually whenever that conversation comes up, we just ask questions about what was the nature of the crime. You know, or was some people don't hire violent offenders, some people do. We're very open, but again, we take into consideration the nature of the crime, the time since the offense, how much time has passed, and what is their overall disposition regarding that offense? How do they explain it? How do they tell their story? And that can help give you some indications, like do they accept their part in that in the offense? Are they willing to move on? Are they really wanting to make a change in their lives? And more often than not, the answer is yes. And if you can see those kind of markers in their personality as they come out in the interview, I think that's indication of a good employee.
Good note. So we've talked about, you know, what would you say to organizations that might be considering moving in this direction? But what are some concrete steps? And I want anyone who wants to jump in to this question to jump in, but let's say you've hired a couple people in the past that have had records. It didn't go well. I hear this from a lot of employers. It didn't go well. It really left a bad taste in my mouth. I don't want to do it, but I have to because I'm short of people. What are some concrete steps that employers can take to move into this direction, to sort of get their feet wet and help them feel more comfortable, you know, moving towards this hiring revolution?
Well, I don't know necessarily that there are certain steps, because like the lady said a minute ago, there's just as many people who haven't committed offenses lose their job for, you know, poor behavior, poor performance. So I don't think there's really an indicator per se that's going to make that easier. I just think that sometimes you have to hire them and navigate their employment with you through a certain colored glasses. I've got one driver I hired who worked at my former company and then has worked for me now. And he couldn't even get a job working for his mother-in-law, who does the exact same thing that we do. But I gave him a chance and he's worked for me. There's been a couple times when I went to ask him a question about something and he became almost physically confrontational. But because I know his background and I know that's kind of you when you grow up in prison, you have to be that way. I was able to just talk him down and say, listen, been there, done that. Let's put that aside. That's not an excuse. Now let's deal with your job. Let's deal with what's going on right here. And instead of just firing him for getting, you know, out of control and animated, I calmed him down and I talked to him, and he's still one of my best drivers that I've got. But I would do that for any employer or any employee, not just the ex-felon guys. I had a young lady who came to work for me for remerge, and she had a 3-month-old baby. We let her bring the child to work every morning from 6 to 7:30 till her daycare opened, and then let her go take the child to daycare. She started using her baby as an excuse to get off early and go meet her boyfriend. So we had to let her go. But that's not you. Those things aren't unique to ex-felons. They're unique to humanity. And I think that if the people that are involved with the justice system, in a way, quit looking at justice involved versus normal, and we're all just part of this society. And I think we kind of box people in because we stare at them so much. We try to put so many barriers, so many extra things on them. I think we just need to start treating them like everybody else.
I agree. I do Whole Health Life Exposed, and all of our events are free to the public. And so for me to advocate for people who have felony backgrounds, I would really, really be adamant about going to those halfway house or places where individuals are just coming out of prison so that they can get their eyes examined, because there's either two reasons that they don't proceed to get a job. They can't read or they can't see to read, and their literacy level was really low. And so the young lady said, well, half of those individuals are not going to come. And I said, why did you say that? And she said, because they're just getting out of prison. They don't want to come to the doctor. And it's not that they don't want to. Someone spoke about people coming and getting off early, but they can't because they have to have approval. Like that process is horrific for some of them. Like that calling and, making sure that they check in and all of those things. They are just coming out of situations to where they don't want to do that. Now they're going back into a situation like that. And so for community health workers, we're the bridge between the customer and the employer, so that if they need any type of assistance and support, that we make sure that they maintain that and they get training properly to where they're not afraid to get on the bus, because that is a skill that's learned. It's a lot of different things that people do not have when they come out of prison. And it's just some training that they need, that assertiveness that they should have to go and get a job. They don't have it at all. It's just gone away because people already put them in a box of saying, oh, well, they have a background or they just got out of prison. They're not going to do that. But like someone else said, they have a lot of employees that are very, very valuable to their employer and to their job. They want to come to work. They don't want to go back to jail.
I would add, I do think there's a responsibility on the part of the employer. So someone who is an employer or maybe has had a bad experience with someone who's been justice involved, I would just ask, but haven't you had bad experiences with people who haven't been? I mean, these are just the facts. And I think employers who choose to hire candidates out of the justice involved pool just have to recognize that maybe they're going to come to the job with some different needs and some different life experiences that require you as an employer to shift your perspective a little bit, to engage with them in maybe a way that's a little bit different, to ask questions or allow them to share things that maybe other employees don't need that conversation, but they are talented and skilled. And most of the folks that we hired didn't even need training. They came to us with the right skills for the job because they already had experience. So I think if you can, I think employers sometimes hold on to the stigma of someone who is formerly incarcerated, and they prejudge that person, and so then they have a bad experience because they kind of expected to. So I think there's some responsibility on the part of the employer to be a little more open-minded and to change the perspective in some way.
Erin, I'm glad you said that. We had to get over what we're calling confirmation bias with some of our hiring managers. Right. So if people perceive that somebody that has a criminal record is going to act up and behave poorly, they're going to be constantly looking for it. They're going to constantly, like, anytime there's a slight offense, they'll over exaggerate it. Versus somebody that doesn't have that criminal background, if somebody has a slight offense or they miss a day of work or they have a bad attitude, we excuse that behavior because they're just human. Right. So trying to train our hiring managers about confirmation bias and say, is that really because of their prior record, or are they just a human, they have a bad day and they need some empathy and some compassion? And this is a coachable moment. This is something that we can talk through together, and we can show them what happened, what our expectations are for behavior, and we can move forward together. So that's definitely been an evolution for our organization that we've had to learn.
I believe I mentioned earlier that one of the things that we suggest is seeking legal counsel. We have over 2,300 employees. So seeking, if you have that option, is to seek legal counsel to just make sure you're not discriminating or having any legalities based on second chance employees.
There is an organization here in Tulsa that provides actually like kind of like a resource hub for all employees. It's a manufacturing organization. They recognize that, a lot of their folks are trying to get out of the gap. So like coming off public assistance, or they are coming out of incarceration, or they, other barriers, or they're rebuilding their lives in other ways. And so they've provided, LASSO, which is Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma. They have an embedded attorney there for helping with any type of legal issues. They'll help them for free with anything like divorces, getting away, protective orders, anything that they any of the barriers that they have. They have an auto clinic that pays for, people's small repairs on their cars. They can apply for grants, things like that to get. And then whenever the employees at Christmas, the rest of the employees, they all pay into this big grant making fund for just everybody. So it's like a community care kind of idea model that I think is really, really cool and would, benefit some of the bigger employers, Sherry, like Aon, to consider just providing people with some guardrails, just so that, they can feel safe coming to you and telling you they have this issue that's preventing, them maybe from appearing, or maybe from not appearing, sorry, that's court language, but preventing them from attending work, or, if they're having other issues, they feel safe and they feel like they can be cared for in those ways, in those ways that maybe traditionally haven't been considered something that's a duty of the employer, but I think maybe moving more in that direction. So we have about 10 minutes left. I would love to just go around the boxes here and hear just your closing thoughts. If you had major takeaways from today, or just what you would want anyone watching to hear, if you have any words of encouragement. A lot of our audience are formerly justice involved that are watching this, and they might be stuck in this area where they are kind of trying to find a better job, or they're stuck in some type of minimum wage earning position that they would like to move up, and they just keep hitting that barrier. Does anybody have, I will just go around and start with you, Susan. What are your closing thoughts?
So for people that are impacted directly by their conviction history, and whether it's recent or they're recently released or recently passed a conviction or have been dealing with this for years, I think that fortunately we're in a really good time, right? So there are a lot of open jobs. Employers are much more willing than before to hire. And here's the thing, there's 1.2 trillion coming from that infrastructure bill, and it's all coming into heavily regulated sectors. And all of those sectors do not hire people with conviction histories, and they're going to have to, right? So we're in a really good time in this nation to get involved in these types of issues. That money's coming into energy, into logistics, into, they're going to revamp ports and airports. Well, none of us can work in any of those jobs. And yet there's 77 million of us, right? And so the time is right for you to shoot your shot, right? Get out there, practice taking no for an answer for a little minute until you get really good and at presenting yourself, and just keep trying, because things are going to open up. We're at this inflection point in our history where we can't keep locking 77 million people out, especially when 70 million of us have no further criminal justice system involvement. And so things are going to open up. You're in a good time, right? Like, you're not going to go through the 18 or 19 years of no's that I've gone through, right? And the things that Doug went through. I think that there's a turning point right now, and it's a good time in history to be, looking for a new opportunity, I think.
I'm just going to go in the order that I see you on my screen. So my next box is Erin.
Okay, well, I would say if you're feeling discouraged right now, I think that Sue is totally right, that opportunities are coming. And I just would tell you that you are valuable, and you do have talent, and you are a worthy employee, and the job is out there. So be encouraged and keep going. And I would say to others who might be listening, that this is a great time to really explore a whole new field of potential employees, and that they're out there and they're ready to work. And it might take some shifts in your employment practices, or the way your team members work. It might take some shifting in the way your managers interact with employees, but ultimately it's a win for everyone. And who are we as humans if we're not making sure that we're all participating in supporting one another? It's our great gift to be able to do that for each other.
I have Doug next.
Well, I would love to see an agency, whether state agency or third-party agency, that specifically was a staffing agency for ex-felons. That as soon as they get out, or if they've been out for 10 years, they would specialize in helping these people get quality jobs. There's Cornbread Hustle in Dallas that does that very same thing with Miss Garcia. Fantastic program. But because we don't have that, we have to rely on our human relationships now, right here where we're at. And I would encourage people, I don't care if you get told 1,000 no's, you can either be that determined, free person with your family or a proud, angry person in prison. Ask for help. Don't be afraid to, because if you need it, you need it. If you want to succeed, people are willing to look for those people who want to succeed, and they will come alongside and help them. I'm a small business. I can only do so much. I don't talk to a lot of big businesses that say they will hire, that they still won't, because even though the president says, yeah, we want to hire, that lady or that guy in HR and that attorney in risk management, they have a different opinion, and they'll go opposite from the president or the CEO because they're looking at liability. You have to be willing to express what you did, your responsibility for your crime, be willing to own that, and you be the first person to talk about it in an interview so that you don't let them spin it in a negative way. Talk about the essentials only. Don't oversell yourself, and just be ready to work. I mean, give a good handshake, look them straight in the eye and say, just give me a chance and I'll be the best guy or gal you've ever had.
I have Laura next.
Doug, that was a really great summary of like what it takes to land that job. Because I've interviewed those people with that attitude and that just give me a chance mentality. And you're right, they turned out to be some of the best people I've ever hired. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to speak a little bit to employers that are considering hiring somebody that has a criminal background. And I just want you to know, you might be pleasantly surprised at the level of talent that's available. In the past, I have hired people that were certified electricians. I've hired people that were degreed engineers. I've even hired somebody that was a medical doctor before they were incarcerated. These people are intelligent, they're talented, they work hard. They just had something happen in their lives that they're ready to move on from. So there is talent, there's aptitude, and most of the time these people are really focused on improving their lives and rebuilding. So absolutely give it a chance if you've never done it before. Second chance employment is a win-win for the employer and for the employee. You just have to be open-minded to it. And if you are an employee or somebody that has a background and you're seeking employment, I'm going to plug manufacturing industries because that's where I come from. And I think oftentimes manufacturing careers get overlooked by people because those aren't jobs that we regularly see either in the media, or there's a lot of push towards service industry jobs. And again, I just want to emphasize manufacturing careers often have really excellent benefits, higher rates of pay, and oftentimes the barrier for entry-level employment is quite a bit lower, and that there's a lot of training opportunities provided by the company. So if you're looking for employment and you're looking to increase your wages, consider working for a manufacturer. And good luck.
Thank you, Laura. I have you next, Sherry.
Laura is absolutely right. Aon is a manufacturing company, and we look for, as I mentioned earlier, contributors. If you have skills, if you are willing to learn, we have tuition reimbursement programs. Just be open and willing and looking for those opportunities with organizations that will help you grow, that will give you those advantages that you're looking for. And it is a candidate's market right now. Candidates are writing their own tickets. Basically, they are demanding what they want. I mean, sometimes that can be a good thing and a bad thing, but right now, as I mentioned, it is a candidate's market, and they are telling the employers what they need, what they want, because there is a high need for team members right now. So I wish you all the best of luck. And remember, Aon is here and we are hiring. We also need about 80 to 100 people, so feel free to apply.
Thanks, Sherry. Rachel, I have you last, and then I'm going to share just a few statistics and do the very, very last word. So go ahead.
I think we need more, how can I say, pop-up shops, awareness for people who are coming out of prison, something that is monthly, that they can look forward to, and also that the employers go and seek other organizations who have structured foundations that have been successful with individuals that are coming out of prison. and build those relationships with them, because it's all about a relationship. People don't trust other people who don't have a felony background. That's weird that we have that stigma when you have a felony background, that you are an infection, like you can give that to someone else. And so to have some really, really strong individuals who really care and show that empathetic relationship to those individuals, I think that we would see more people go to work. We would see more families be able to give back to society and build those relationships with their families that they have been disconnected from. And people just be a bridge, be a strong bridge for people who have felony backgrounds, because it is very serious. You, like she said, you can do one thing wrong and you can go back to jail just because you didn't call somebody. And so from my experience, I became a guinea pig for my company so that I would make sure that these people are treated properly. They have professional support and they are not going to be left out and they're just a number after they sign in or they put their names on this piece of paper. No one follows up with them. No one speaks to them about, are you capable of reading this? Do you understand? That comprehension is very important for people who coming out of prison or even have a background, because the laws have changed and most of the time a person cannot read. They will not open up a newspaper or a magazine to see where their needs can be met from another organization who can help them with all of these issues that they are having. And so that's my take on it. I really wish we would have more employees who actually go and just be a guinea pig for their employees that they're going to hire. So
Thank you, Rachel. I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to just acknowledge the policy reality here in Oklahoma. So people coming out of prison, the single greatest indicator of their success is employment. And yet currently, as of 2020, we've identified 1,088 provisions of Oklahoma law that impose collateral consequences. The majority of those are barriers to employment for people with criminal convictions. If you are a lawmaker and you have any type of influence with your lawmakers and your friends and anybody, I would ask that we go and look at those 1,088 provisions of Oklahoma law, because they're buried in there. And Susan knows they're all the way down in, your real estate admission license law, your daycare laws, your all of your employment regulation laws. These types of collateral consequences are buried there. And so I would just ask everybody on this call, if you have people that you can call and ask to look at this at the legislature in Oklahoma, it is a big issue. It is something that people need to get fixed. People can only do so much. Employers can only do so much if the law is providing these barriers. So thank you. Doug has one more thing. He raised his hand. What's up, Doug?
I was just practicing how to do that. No, just kidding. One thing I would suggest too is when you get out of prison, make sure that your background report is accurate, because the way a lot of employers are getting around the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the federal law, is they ask the local, like for Oklahoma, it would be the OSBI. The OSBI is not governed by anybody except for another state agency. They can report anything they want to in your background report. They don't have to comply with the Fair Credit Reporting Act that most employers do. So you have to make sure that your background report is accurate, because unless you make it accurate, you'd be surprised some of the things you can find on your background report that might be hurting your job prospects and you don't even know what it is. So get your background report, make sure it's accurate, and then go from there.
That's a really good point, Doug. I mean, the accuracy, also sometimes we're reporting on the wrong people, wrong things are coming up on background reports, and it's on the applicant's job to make sure that that stuff is accurate before it goes to the employer. Okay, we're going to wrap up. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate you spending your lunch with us. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you got some more empathy in your heart for people. I hope that we can start, moving forward and reducing these consequences for people who have already paid their debt to society. Thank you guys so much. I will see you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate
Bye.
it. Thank you. All right. Bye. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye.
Thanks, guys.